Welcome back to the podcast where passion and purpose collide. Today, we are here with Dori Roberts Stewart, who is the president of Engineering for Kids. Engineering for Kids is a STEM education franchise for children. After working as a high school teacher for 11 years, Dori founded the company in 2009 to teach children ages 4 to 14 STEM. What started as an after-school program evolved into a year-round set of classes, summer camps, birthday parties, workshops, and more than 100 locations worldwide. Dori, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
We are excited to have you, and I think this is such a neat topic, and your story is such a neat story for other women. I think it's very inspiring to have started in one space and end up in such a different place than you probably originally thought. So tell us a little bit about how you got to franchising from being a high school teacher.
Sure. So yeah, my background is in education. My undergrad degree is in elementary, middle, math and science education, and my master's degree is in technology education. So like you said, I started teaching high school engineering. I taught for 11 years. And during that time, I was also the advisor of an after-school club called the Technology Student Association. And it was through that club that I took my students to various competitions, statewide as well as nationally. And throughout that process, I had my own children. And, this is a volunteer gig for teachers. So I would, cart my kids along with me and take them to all these competitions. And they'd hang out in my classroom with me. And I'd come home from school and they'd ask about the progress that my high school students were making in their projects. And so one summer we had a national TSA competition, and it happened to be in Orlando, Florida over the summer. And so I thought, my kids will not forgive me if I don't take them along.
Good move.
So I decided to combine the trip and make it also, some family time. And I thought that I was going to have trouble with them all week. I thought that they were going to, be begging me to go to Disney. And, I did carve out a Disney day, but I thought it was going to be a torturous week for them. But instead, they were very excited with what my high school students were doing. And they wanted to go and watch all the competitions. And I remember my son being upset that he couldn't compete too. It was cute. So, that really prompted me to start thinking about, what is being taught in the schools. They were in elementary school. And so I was looking at their curriculum and, I saw that they're teaching math and science, but they weren't teaching the applied math and science. They weren't teaching engineering. And the only kids at their school that was getting those opportunities are the kids who were enrolled in the gifted and talented program. And so I one day had a flyer come home in my son's backpack that the PTA was doing a fundraiser, and they were asking parents if they had any hobbies or a business or, wanted to volunteer to teach an after-school program to raise money for the school. And so I thought, okay, I could take what I'm doing with my high school kids and because I have, my bachelor's degree is in elementary middle education, I could, change it up and make it more developmentally appropriate for the elementary age kids. And that first class was a civil engineering class, and it took off. The kids loved it. I had parents pull me aside and ask, what else I had to offer, and the principal asked me back, and word got out to other schools, surrounding this particular school. And I started, teaching programs in the after school setting. And I had a parent say, do you offer summer camps? And I thought, okay, this is something that I could do with my kids, a little side hustle. And the summer camp took off, and I ended up quitting my teaching job and added more curriculum and added more programs. And so a couple years into it, I started getting people, kind of falling upon my website. They would Google things like engineering programs for kids in Chicago, or, engineering curriculum for kids in Atlanta. And so people were emailing me from all over the world wanting to buy my curriculum or they would say, do you have any plans to bring Engineering for Kids, to this location?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing the research on ways to grow my business and really found that franchising was the best business model for Engineering for Kids.
Mhm.
I feel like with this type of business, you really need, that owner operator that knows their own community best. So it was at that time I started doing the research and took every class I could find, read books, talked to any franchise consultant or any franchisor that would talk to me to pick their brain. And I ultimately got my CFE, my Certified Franchise Executive credentials through the IFA, and found a great attorney and started doing the work to create my manuals and get all the legal documents together. And in 2011, we sold our first franchise.
I love this story for a lot of reasons, which is, it was just an idea, which was, you know what, maybe we'll help the PTA raise some money and I have this skill and we'll just do this after school program. It was just to help out, right? And then others began to ask, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do camps? It's kind of like you were led in this direction without even knowing you were going this direction, simply by listening to the feedback of folks. And then, like you said, adapting your curriculum, and in this case, also adapting your business model so it could get out to more people. It's like, I guess what I'm amazed about with this, Elizabeth and Dori, is the trust and the faith that you sort of had that this is what you were supposed to be doing.
Thank you.
So
it is a remarkable thing when you think about it, because I think a lot of us have ideas or say, I have this skill and maybe I could do this or that, but very few follow through or
Right.
follow through to the point of success. You know the saying about how many people give up right before they hit success. So what about you, do you think gave you that drive? And it is a leap of faith to quit your job and to go into business and then to franchise and then just, to franchise on a bigger scale. What about you makes you unafraid to do that, I think?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think I kind of took things, definitely step by step.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started the business, I was still teaching. I at the time was fresh off of a divorce, and so I originally, it was something that I could do to, one, give back to the community, but also I could include my own kids with me. So I was carting them along with me to these after school programs in these camps. They made the best guinea pigs to test the curriculum. But it really gave me, something to, pour my heart and soul into during that time. But I also got to do it with my kids, which was very cool. And, they're both in college now, but they still, when they were in high school, they were Engineering for Kids teachers. And my son actually is currently helping with curriculum.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so they're both going into STEM fields, and, they still ask, questions about, who's coming to the next Discovery Day. They're still very involved in the whole process.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there's a special thing that happens for a lot of us. I've been through a divorce myself, and I feel like a lot of times you become more of a unit. Like, we are going to do this together and we are going to have this experience together, not only to help them through a tough time, but
Mm-hmm.
to just redefine, what your life is going to look like. And so being able to pull them into something that you're doing like that had to be a great gift during a time that could have been, and I'm sure was, a struggle, but you had all of this positive energy coming to you at that time. I mean, what kind of impact did that have on getting you
It was really cool. It was really cool. They had a lot of pride in it. And especially when their friends were, taking Engineering for Kids classes, and, they'd wear their Engineering for Kids gear to school, and they were like, that's my mom's business. So it was really cool, for them to see the business grow. I think it was a big learning experience for them as well as myself, because it's a new business model for me, and they were learning through it with me, which was very cool. So
Well, and one more thing, but before we move on to the different section of questions, but do you have boys or girls, or but one of each?
one of each.
Okay, so I think seeing a strong woman
Mhm.
create something out of nothing,
Mhm.
my kids, especially during that time, I think were proud to see me do things that they thought were cool. So I think that it's very cool that during a tough time of life, you also were able to do something like this that made your kids see you in action and seeing you be strong and seeing you successful. What do you think that has taught them?
Oh, goodness. I think it's taught them that they can get through
Mhm.
hard times as well. Um, so I think it opened their eyes to that they may not have had that experience otherwise.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, I mean, it got me through, those tough times, and gave me something to focus on, and, gave me something to, kind of pour into. And the fact that they got something out of it as well, it was just, icing on the cake.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Did you ever think you were going to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, a franchisor?
No, I did not. I did not. No, I am, a first generation college student. My parents, they are very proud of me. But when I was in high school, I was very social. I was a cheerleader. I didn't make the best grades. I was a very average student. And so they would have been happy if I had just, gone straight into the workforce. But I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be a teacher. And, I remember my mom, when my parents dropped me off freshman year, we drove past a medical school, which was near the college where I went to. And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, you can just go sit on the steps and get your MRS." And she was joking, but not really joking.
Find yourself a nice doctor, right?
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, so I very much enjoyed teaching. It wasn't that I was looking to be a business owner. And other than courses I've taken through IFA, I don't have a business degree. I have a degree in education. So it's been a learning process, and so it's really just kind of taking everything step by step has gotten me through it.
Well, and to be driven by a purpose, you're definitely driven by a purpose, but the expectations that your family had of you were kind of average expectations. They weren't expecting you to take over the STEM world, or build this empire the way you have. And yet fate, let's call it fate for lack of a better word, has led you to a place where you're making a difference in a lot of children's lives, not just in those courses, but it's going to change the direction of their lives in general, possibly careers and ways that they can create their own life. But you pointed out something that I thought was interesting, that many of these STEM programs or engineering programs were for the gifted, for those that were gifted and or had the financial resources. How are you addressing that, and how does that play into everything that you're doing?
Yeah, so it's interesting at the elementary level. Back in 2009, it was just the gifted kids who had those opportunities, and even at the high school level, where at the time I was teaching, it was interesting. I would mostly get males in my classes,
Ah,
and so it took a lot of work to kind of train the guidance counselors on what STEM is, what opportunities are out there for girls and boys. And it was really through my involvement with the Technology Student Association So I had only 8 students the first year I started that club, and I had 180 the last year teaching. And that experience that the kids were having, the word got out that it was a lot of fun, that we had these really cool projects. We got to go on trips, which, kids love that. But that is really what was the turning point for me recruiting girls. And once I got them in my classroom and they started taking my classes, they would say to me, I wish I had known about this sooner. I would have taken classes back in middle school, or I would have started earlier in high school. And so I strongly believe that if we can get kids introduced to engineering at a young age, and hook them in and show them how fun it is and show them what a great impact it has on the world, the whole entire, everything is made better by engineers. And so, showing kids the impact that engineers have, but really getting those girls excited early to help fill that large gender gap that we have in engineering. That was a really cool thing to be a part of. And, now being international and reaching girls all over the world, of course, the boys love it too, but it's just been really cool seeing 4-year-old girls in the engineering programs. And if you can get in that early,
how do you educate? Like, one of the questions that popped into my mind when you were talking about the elementary program with the PTA, how many kids knew what the words civil engineering meant?
Exactly. I wouldn't have known.
No. Most, STEM has now, there's a lot more awareness now, but back in 2009 when I started, if you had asked a kindergartner, what is an engineer? They might say someone who drives a train. So that's the very first thing we talk about in all of our programs. What is an engineer? What is technology? What do engineers do? And so we go through, that process and then narrow it down. Okay, now that you know what an engineer is, what is a civil engineer do? What do they do? What do they design? And guess what, kids, you're going to get to be a civil engineer today. And then we give them a challenge. And the magic of engineering for kids is we don't tell the kids, okay, you're going to build a bridge and this is how you're going to build it and follow these directions. We don't do that. We tell them, you're going to design a bridge that's going to hold the most weight possible. And we let them use their creativity, use their problem solving skills, and we let them run with it and design on their own. And that's when the magic happens.
That's brilliant.
I love those projects because I had my kids are all, 14 to 22. And so when they're probably similar ages to yours, and it was only the gifted kids, and I had my kids in the gifted classes, and I remember going to those competitions at the gifted center where they would build a dome, and whoever's dome, they would weigh it and they'd have a competition, or they went to the best robotics. And you got, you went through it year after year, and eventually you got to be the driver of the robot, so those things, they got so much out of that. But if they had not been in those programs, and they were all boys, the girls are married-ins, and they did not do the engineering thing either. They were in gifted programs, but they didn't have that same experience. So how do you spread the word? I think calling it STEM and the push that the science community has made for knowing what that means has been beneficial. But how do you get this in their everyday vernacular?
Well, so you got to make it fun.
Right.
That's the point. It's all about the student experience in our programs, and making sure that when they come, not only are they having a good time, they're also learning. We kind of say that we sneak in the learning a bit. But if we start using the terminology in the classes over and over again, and if we encourage them to use the terminology, then it starts to become, part of the everyday, conversation when they're doing these builds. And it's really cool to see, a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old explain to you what, a civil engineer is.
Yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenge that these young engineers are going to have to deal with in the future? What problems will they be solving that you're prepping them for through this education and having them see a future that they can, with their problem solving skills and their building skills, solve? What are some of the problems these future engineers are going to be solving?
So I love that question. That is a great question. There's so many problems that need to be solved, and there's such a wide variety within engineering. And so it could be, solving energy issues. That is something that is not going to go away. We have a lot of problems to solve in terms of energy. But then you think about things, and I'm going back to getting girls excited about engineering, the things that kind of pull on your heartstrings a bit, thinking about, biomedical engineers and thinking
Yes.
about, the design of prosthetics, or, things that will improve the daily lives of people. Those are some of the things that get people really excited about.
That would definitely excite me, this whole, especially in the medical field, what can be done now with robotics and even surgeries that are done virtually. I mean, you're in one state and you're doing surgery here, and some brilliant engineer figured that out and is saving lives doing that. And society always has challenges. It's amazing how technology is solving many of those challenges. Of course, it's also creating some challenges and where we're not quite social as what we may have been in the past. But I know that could be solved also. So talk to us a little bit more about how girls are taking to this. Are they telling their friends about this? Or are they hoarding it for themselves? What are they doing? It's like, I don't want you in the club because this is all about me. I mean, how are they handling it?
I think that girls have gotten a lot better with being comfortable working with technology and being involved in STEM programs and competing with the boys. I think that it's becoming I think a lot easier for girls to be involved. The more we include girls, the more they get comfortable, and watch out, boys, because we've got some very gifted engineers that are females, and females think differently than boys, and so we solve problems differently, and so there's a room for both. But getting them excited young, I think when they're a 4-year-old coming into a program, they're just there to have fun. They don't really think yet that this is supposed to be for boys. That notion isn't there yet. And so getting them used to that at age 4, only makes them more confident as they move through, and especially that confidence in math. I see a lot of girls lose their confidence. They say it's around 4th, 5th grade where girls start to lose their confidence in math. But if they're having positive experiences where they're applying math, through programs like Engineering for Kids, I think it is only going to improve their confidence as they get older.
Well, you're so right, because little girls don't question it. You put it in front of them and they're just accepting. They're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Great. But I do think that, from a marketing kind of perspective, it is being celebrated more now. And like I do some marketing for the Hiller Company sometimes, which is a fire protection thing, and it's male dominated by far. But we try to talk and encourage women in the field to be celebrated. And they pull things out with their social media posts, and they talk about the women miners, out in Arizona who are engineers of that particular field. And I think hopefully that will continue to grow, and businesses like theirs will continue to encourage and recruit and promote women in leadership positions to get more women in.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things that we've noted, Elizabeth and I, is that women seem to be more collaborative. And I guess I'm curious, Dori, if this is a attribute that's useful in solving problems, engineering problems, where this collaborative versus I have all the answers, or this is my project, that women do tend to be better at the sharing of ideas and collaborating. Is that true even as when kids are smaller, and is there something that you do to encourage that? I'm just wondering if you could address that.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right on. And in the real world, engineers work together in teams. And it's often in those teams where you have engineers who have different expertise. And so through the Engineering for Kids programs, we have the kids work together in teams, and we give them, different jobs, if you will, within the team, and rotate them through so they can see the importance of different roles within the engineering team. And they come to our programs and we tell them, okay, you are an engineer today, and this is your problem to solve. And we let them run with it. And we all of our programs incorporate that team cooperation, and the girls are very good at it.
I want to know how many of them boss the boys around.
Yes.
Girls make very good leaders.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point about most of these problems that engineers are solving, a single brain, a single expertise, a single thought isn't going to cut it. It really does require collaboration, co-creation, some way of tapping into those individual strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And women are kind of wired to do that. So I'm looking forward in the next 10, 15, 20 years to see Engineering for Kids and girls in engineering in general, how this whole world is going to change based on this natural tendency. Now we're just teaching them math, and we're teaching them engineering, and we're teaching them problem solving, but they already had the skills of team and collaboration and those kinds of things. So I'm looking at a world that's going to be just beautiful.
I love it. I'm looking forward to it too.
So one last question before we wrap things up, what through this path, because it was a different path than you anticipated, and you learned a lot of new things along the way, what is the best piece of advice you got along that path as you were building your success?
That is a great question. I would say just follow your instincts. I think that in business, I'm actually almost happy that I don't have a formal business background, because I think that if I had formal business training, I probably wouldn't have kind of just jumped into business. I probably would have followed the steps you're supposed to follow. And so I would say, follow the path you were led to lead, and not get hung up on what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
that's great advice. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think some of the most successful people I have seen, having 27 years now working with franchisors, franchisees, entrepreneurs, I think what you're suggesting is so true. When you have that business plan and every detail, filled out, the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and the projections and all of that stuff, this more kind of build the airplane as you're flying kind of idea, as long as you're coming from some level of purpose, and sanity, seems to be working for many entrepreneurs, and to go using that kind of passion, that kind of purpose, that kind of faith and trust that this is the way you're being led, and these are your gifts, and you're simply applying them, and it just happens to be turning into a business, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Very, very exciting. Oh my goodness, I want to be an engineer. Is it too late?
Probably not, Rebecca. I think you could switch gears.
Do we get to wear cute little aprons or anything like that? No.
I can sign you up for a class.
Or those pocket protector thingies. I get to wear.
That's what you.
Mark
That's what
that,
you do.
have it.
I want to look the part, right?
That's awesome. Well, Dori, tell us if someone is interested in engineering for kids, and either as a franchisor or as a consumer, what is the best way to go about reaching out to get more information?
Go to our website, engineeringforkids.com, and there's information there on both signing up for a program as well as finding out information on franchising.
Excellent. All right, guys, you heard it right here. Where passion and purpose collide. This is a girl that's living her passion, and she's also on purpose and allowing a whole lot of other little boys and little girls who soon will be men and women who are changing the planet. So thanks for being with us, Dori. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.